Good morning to everyone. My name is Riccardo Cariani. I'm working for IPLE in the Innoveas project, which is one of the projects to be presented today at this seminar workshop. Let's start with the daily activity and the presentation of our projects and the results achieved so far. We can go to the next slide. Okay, just a few hints on what we are going to do in this hour and a half. Yeah, very briefly, after the welcome speech, we will have, let's say, a short workshop presentation, especially a few minutes explaining the 4 projects that are running this workshop. Then we will have 3 sessions related to the content side of these projects. Then, if time will allow us, we will try to drive some small conclusion on this event, especially using the question that may rise during the presentation of our colleagues. Please, next slide. Yeah, few hints on, let's say, the way we are running this workshop. This session is being recorded, so it will be available also after the live streaming. So please notice that everything will be recorded. Please make sure that your microphone is muted in order to have not rumors and surroundings. Anyway, you can be in contact with the project and with the speakers using the chat function, where you are really welcome to enter your question that will be answered either directly after each presentation, or rather we can sum them up during the conclusions. Last but not least, this is an interactive session. Even if your microphone is muted, you will have the possibility, and of course you are required to participate, to interact with us, not only with the chat, but also with the participation to the polls that will appear after each presentation. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just as a nice breaking, please answer these few questions just right now. Okay, so this is the audience we are dealing with, and these are basically, this is the picture of the interests of the audience that we are dealing with. This was just a nice breaking activity that was also intended to show you how we are dealing in this workshop. Second question, please. Okay, once again, these are the result of this initial poll. This is intended just to have a kind of possibility to know each other. Of course, we are not face to face, but at least we have some information on the people that is attending this webinar. Okay. Initial questions are over, so we can proceed with the webinar, of course, starting with the presentation of Mr. Oronzo Daloiso, which is the project advisor of the Executive Agency for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprise in the European Commission. Please, Mr. Daloiso.
Thank you very much, Riccardo. So, good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, as I said, I cannot see the screen, so I don't know the results that came out of this icebreaker exercise you did, but it's okay, I will live with that. So the introductory slide that you can see is basically the title of the presentation is Overview H2020 Energy Efficiency Projects Tackling SMEs. So I will give a very short speech to give you a global idea of what we've been financing so far in this sector, which actually concerns all of the projects being presented today. So prior to that, actually, I would like to thank the organizers for taking the initiative of organizing this workshop. Especially, I think it's a very good cross-collaboration, cross-project collaboration exercise. So very happy to see this happening. Now, to give you an idea of where we are, which surely most of you know, we're currently at the very end of the programming period 2014-2020. So literally the projects we funded last year will be the last ones, tackling energy efficiency in industry and SMEs. So these projects that are currently running will be the last ones under H2020 energy efficiency calls, because in the future we'll move on to something else, to the Life Clean Energy Transition sub-program. Now, the next slide shows you how did H2020 projects tackle energy efficiency in industry and SMEs. So the approach we followed during H2020 was to tackle this issue actually via CSA types of actions, so coordination and support actions, which actually means market uptake activities. In other words, looking for projects dealing with SMEs concretely at local level, so not research projects or innovation projects. So that's the first thing which brings together all the projects. And the activities which we covered throughout the entire 2014-2020 topics that were open for this topic, SMEs and energy efficiency, were of course improving skills and capacity of market stakeholders, then working on the decision makers of the company so that they embrace the multiple benefits concept, stakeholder mobilization, knowledge transfer and awareness raising, supporting the definition of standards and benchmarks, which is always so easy, of course, since SMEs deal with a very diverse type of products and markets. So we try to streamline this and accelerate the uptake of best available technologies. Leveraging investment. So as you know, most of your projects have as one KPI the investment in sustainable energy that were done by the companies, and finally the supporting of policy implementation, specifically Article 8 of the Energy Efficiency Directive, which is currently undergoing a revision, possible revision exercise, including Article 8 and the part regarding the obligation of audit schemes for companies that are bigger than SMEs. So we use projects basically to investigate this. In the next slide, so I recap what I was just said, and The MFF, so the multi-annual framework, financial framework, which is about to be concluded because it will run until December 2020. Well, our goal was to support the energy performance, tackling the market uptake, leveraging skills, knowledge, and investments in companies. So far in H2020, in these 7 years, we funded 18 projects, which globally received 36 million euros. So as you can see, on average, 2 million euros per project. And on average, each project is running for about 36 months. And these projects involve SMEs operating in very different sectors. I mean, steel, food and beverage, automotive. So that was a very diverse business sectors that were tackled. And these topics or these activities tackling SMEs and energy efficiency will continue this market uptake part in the Future Life Clean Energy Transition Program. Now, these energy efficiency H2020 calls were themselves building on a previous program, which some of you may remember, which was the Intelligent Energy Europe program that instead was running from 2023 to 2013. So that was followed by H2020 energy efficiency up until now 2020, and the future would be the Life Clean Energy Transition sub-program. So in the next slide, you can see from the beginning of the MFF which topic specifically and which projects we funded. So back in 2014, we funded two projects dealing actually with water and steam. That was also CSA, Energy Water and Steam Up, both of which are concluded. And in 2015, we also funded projects that were tackling industry, or industrial SMEs, so e-metal, water, Scoop, dealing with agro-food, and again, energy water. So that was basically the focus back at the time. You may remember water and water efficiency was a big priority for the Commission at the time. So this also explains why a number of projects in the sector were funded at the time, including the creation of EAPs and other type of actions that the Commission was funding. In the next slide, you can see what we funded in 2017, 18, and 2019. So in use and benefits, Next and SMEmPower, these are running projects. Some of them were concluded this year. And here the focus was to already shift it to behavioral and organizational change and multiple benefits, to then move really onto 2018, where we continued funding projects regarding capacity building and training. That was the EE8 topic, which was open for 2 years, 2018, 2019. Here the focus was very much on capacity building, but also the focus on Article 8. So 2018 saw projects covering specific sectors. So E2 Driver is basically looking at the automotive supply chain. Then ICE is looking at the cold chain in the food and beverage sector. SMEmPower efficiency is developing a certified education and training program, covering various sectors, amongst which the manufacturing sector. So that was again the key focus. And in 2019, the last projects we funded all of three of which are ongoing. Covered more the support schemes part for member states, meaning where member states have an obligation to give out incentives for SMEs to become more energy efficient or to do energy audits. The difficulty, of course, they encounter is how to come up with a scheme which can fit all the SMEs they have in the territory, being so diverse in terms of size, in terms of business sectors, in terms of capacity, of financing capacity. So these projects are basically working to try to mainstream and develop some support scheme that member states can use to comply with Article 8, basically. So that's basically what we funded so far. Where are we heading to? We're heading to the Life Clean Energy Transition Sub-Program, which will start from next year. SMEs and industry will still be part of this. We are running a number of initiatives, workshops, stakeholder consultation, surveys, to use a very much bottom-up approach to hear from our stakeholders. Many of you may have received some invitations to some of these initiatives, including the survey, including workshops that we're organizing, to know whether the challenge of engaging SMEs and industry in the clean energy transition, to know whether this model that we follow, so capacity building, behavior change, multiple benefits, training schemes, official training schemes, are indeed the best solutions that we can use to go into this direction, to push SMEs basically to solve the problems they have in terms of time, in terms of financing, in terms of skills, to basically do this step, to see how in the future we could perhaps better tackle this and which kind of initiatives actually we should be funding to look into this. So I very much thank you for organizing this workshop, and I will stay with you. I will not be able to see the slides, but I will hear with interest what will come out from this meeting. So thank you very much. Of course, I remain available if there are any questions on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Daloiso, and to be for this clear and detailed references to the program and the projects. This is I remind to the participants that you are able to interact with all the speakers using the chat function, even if there won't be maybe possibility to go into details to all the questions raised. We will anyway track all the questions and we will be able to provide you answer on that. Time is running. I will be presenting the 4 projects that are here today, gathering in order to discuss the topics that we are going to deal with. We rather prefer not to, let's say, split the presentation of each single project, but we'd rather prefer to put together the 4 projects dealing with the 3 issues and contents-wise that we have defined in this presentation. Just a very short, anyway, presentation of the project. I don't want to steal time to then the other 3 speakers. The first project is the A2 driver. Is a project involving 12 different partners coming from 5 countries. In a nutshell, the main purpose of the project is to develop a collaborative training platform for the SMEs operating through the whole automotive supply chain. As you will see, as you will have the possibility during this workshop, you will see that these 4 projects have issues, of course, in common, coming from, let's say, the same funding axis and measure, but of course each project have a peculiarity and specificity. Next slide, please. You will have then the chance to go into details of each single project. So my idea is now just to highlight which are the peculiarities. So the E2 driver is targeting to 40 European companies in the automotive sector that will be directly involved in the project, meaning that more than 650 staff members will be trained, and the main solution and tools that the project will provide are an innovative learning platform, a cooperative network, and a capacity building program. Next, please. The second project is the SPEEDIER. This time, this project is involving 10 different partners coming from 5 countries, where the main objective of this project is to foster the market uptake of energy efficiency solution by providing a self-financed outsourced energy management service to SMEs. So as we can see from this next slide, the main target of this project are more than 100 SMEs in Europe, meaning around 650 staff members of the said SMEs, and in addition 50 SPEEDIER experts will be trained, and the tools and solution that the project is going to provide on the field is an outsourced energy manager to guide SMEs, a self-financing solution through ring fencing and reinvesting savings, an energy auditing tool to speed and standardize audits, and a mobile app to build capacity in SMEs. The third project that is working with us today is the SMEmPower efficiency. This project is gathering 10 partners coming from 8 different European countries, and its main purpose is to develop a certified education and training program for SMEs operating in the manufacturing sector. And its main target group are more than 700 energy managers in SMEs that will be trained. In addition, more than 800 staff members of SMEs will be trained on site, meaning directly training, and then financing entities to be reached through targeted workshops. So also stakeholders in the financial sectors. Then, as in terms of solution and tools to be displayed, an advanced training handbook in 7 languages, a web platform for energy analytics, a tool for monitoring and targeting, and then a tool for measurement and verification. Last project here with us today is the Novelas Project. This project is again involving 10 different partners coming from 6 European countries, and its main purpose is to address the major non-technical barriers hampering SMEs from undergoing energy audit, where the focus will be on SMEs. Target group of Novelas Project are European SMEs in the construction, chemical and food sectors, as well as industrial association, policymaker, several institutional actors, and financial institutions. Then tools implemented by the project are, first of all, an assessment on enterprise energy culture, focusing on non-technical barriers and existing framework conditions. Secondly, a capacity building program for SME stakeholders and intermediaries. Lastly, an European alliance for energy audit in SMEs. So, if you would like to have any more details or information on the project, feel free to ask on the chat or simply surf into the web looking for each single project website. It's not my intention to steal time from my colleague. So let's go immediately to the next session, which is SME and energy efficiency, needs and background discoveries to date. I leave the floor to Mr. Grigoris Papagiannis from the project SMEmPower Efficiency, and please, I ask him to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. Good morning, everyone. My name is Grigoris Papagiannis. I am a professor of power systems in the School of Electrical and Computer Engineering of the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki in Greece, and I am the coordinator of the SMEmPower project. In this session, we will try to present, let's say, a concatenation of findings and outcomes from all 4 projects, and I find this approach very appealing. So we tried to organize them in 3 presentations, and this is the first one. This presentation is actually focused on the findings and the identification of the barriers that has been accomplished by all 4 projects through a number of questionnaires and surveys that they were performed in the previous year. So starting from the European targets for the climate and energy based on the 2020 of 2020, the targets for 2030 are really ambitious, and they are getting even more ambitious these days. We know that there is a target for increase of energy efficiency and energy savings at up to 32.5% up to 2030, and in this specific target also they are included all measures and let's say work that will be done in improving the energy efficiency and the energy footprint for SMEs. Next slide, please. But why the SMEs? The SMEs are actually a big part of the European economy. They cover almost 99% of all the businesses. They employ about 100 million people, and also they are responsible for about 13% of the total energy demand. So there is a, let's say, a good possibility that improving the energy efficiency of the SMEs, we can tackle the energy efficiency targets of the European Union very efficiently. So to start with, all 4 projects, they actually did some survey, and here are more or less the numbers of the survey of the sample. So in this slide, you can see that my project SMEmPower, we contacted 213 SMEs from 8 countries in a cross-sectoral approach. Innoveas contacted 513 companies with 41 in-depth interviews from 5 countries, and also with a cross-sectoral approach. Next slide, please. The SPEEDIER project contacted 84 SMEs in 4 countries, also in a cross-sectoral approach. And finally, the E2 driver actually contacted 12 companies, but targeted in a specific sector, the automotive industry. And these companies, they were located in 4 countries. Now, more or less, the questions in these questionnaires were similar. However, there were specific differences depending on the sample, the country, and everything. So we will try to, let's say, organize the results in a way to highlight the common findings of all these surveys that may apply generally at the European level. I must highlight that all these results came out before the COVID-19 pandemic. So maybe the situation will be a little bit different if we would conduct the same survey right now, but nevertheless, the findings, they are really interesting. So we're coming to the first point, energy managers in SMEs. It seems that the situation is not so good, because 62% of the companies that were surveyed, they said that they do not have any energy manager in their company, while 18% of the companies, they said that they assigned the tasks of energy management to a staff member, besides some other tasks. So we can see that this situation is not so appealing actually. However, in the automotive sector, all 12 companies, they have energy managers or someone from the staff responsible for this. Maybe because they are more organized, they have to communicate with bigger companies and so on. The next point was the energy monitoring. What happens with energy monitoring? It seems that only half of the companies that were contacted, they use some monitoring system. Most of them, they are just following the energy bills and the recordings from energy measuring devices. The other half declares that they do not have the available resources, or they have other priorities, or finally they don't even believe that it is necessary. That means that there is practically a lack of awareness in the companies, especially in the staff of the companies regarding the measuring procedures. And of course, this is something that will be tackled by almost all projects in the process. Finally, the good point is that the companies that they are monitoring their data, they realize that they have to compare them to some baseline and take some conclusions out, set some KPIs and so on. This is a good finding, I would say. So next slide, please. However, despite the fact that energy monitoring is not so popular between the SMEs that they were conducted, most of them, they actually look for the best energy performance or the best energy labeling when they are ready to do some investment in new equipment or systems. On the other hand, they believe that it would be very crucial for their operation to identify the most energy consuming devices and processes in their companies, and also based on an energy monitoring to build, let's say, a case with targets and key performance indicators that should be tackled in the process of improving the energy efficiency. Next slide, please. Now we come to the energy audits. Here the situation is more or less like this in 10 countries. You can see in this bar graph the results that came out of a pretty nice sample, I would say, of companies. And as you can see, the situation is not so good, meaning that only few SMEs have proceeded to some energy audit. And in some countries, this percentage is really poor, while in some others countries is almost half, let's say, of the companies that were surveyed. Next slide, please. If we see what type of energy monitoring standards the companies follow, here the situation is more or less similar to the previous one. The companies that they have already adopted some energy monitoring standard, they are only few. Let's say most of them, they are 77 that they have adopted the ISO 14001, while some of them have adopted several standards that they are not all related to energy efficiency. Next slide, please. Now, the good news comes here that we saw that 72% of the companies that they had already implemented some energy audit, they proceeded in implementation of some measures for energy efficiency improvement in Cyprus, Germany, Greece, Italy, Poland, Romania, Slovenia, Spain, and UK. That means that energy audit is a good first step in implementing some energy efficiency measures afterwards. Regarding the energy efficiency measures, there is a graph that came out from one of the projects, and it shows that 60% they invested actually in measures of technical systems like lighting, ventilation, heating, cooling, automation, and so on. 28% in measures the level of the technological process on the production lines. The same 28% in measures at the building environment, in the building envelope, sorry, but here only with companies that they own their own buildings, and then 21% in demand response actions, and finally 14% in energy management, in training, monitoring of energy consumption, and so on. Next slide, please. What was the motivation behind the implementation of some energy efficiency measures? First of all, of course, it was the reduction of the energy bills. 87% they said that we did it in order to reduce our energy bills. However, there was a strong, let's say 65%, that they were aware about the climate change and the contribution of improving the energy efficiency to mitigate the climate change. And also 47% of the companies interviewed, they said that they also want to improve the image of the company, and that's why they are implementing these energy efficiency measures. There are also some other interesting, just a moment, yeah, there are some other interesting responses. For example, 20% of the interviewed companies, they said that they believe that through energy efficiency, they improve their product quality, and 11% they said that they increase the safety of the operations. And these results are fully compliant with other results from other projects that they really stated that besides the financial benefits, there are also other benefits that they come out of implementing energy efficiency measures. Next slide, please. Okay, coming to the renewables, the situation is more or less expected. Most of the companies, they really believe in renewables. They feel that renewables are very good, and they use half of them, they use renewables in their companies, while almost 30% of them, they buy renewable energy from energy retailers or from nearby installations of renewables. Those SMEs that they do not use or they are not interested in renewables, they believe that renewable energy is very expensive, it's not necessary, it's complicated, and perhaps they have other priorities and so on. Of course, the most commonly used renewable energy sources are the PVs, and they are followed by waste heat recovery and wood-burning stoves. Next slide, please. Now, coming to what they plan for the future, the results are not so, let's say, nice. Some 46% out of the 213 SMEs interviewed in Cyprus, Germany, Greece, Italy, Romania, Slovenia, Spain, and UK, they actually reported that they do not have any energy strategy within the next 3 years. While 45% out of 33 companies in Germany, Italy, Poland, Slovenia, and Spain said that they do not plan to conduct any energy audits in the near future. Next slide, please. And coming to the finance of energy efficiency measures were implemented, almost half of them was funded by own funds, while 15% by European grants or other grants, 8% by bank loans, some 6% from national support schemes, and so on. And this shows the need for a significant increase in third-party financing through the deployment of funding mechanisms like ESCO contracts or better access to finance. And this is very important because in these days there will be many support schemes based on the COVID-19 pandemic, and maybe some of them could be targeted also towards improving the energy efficiency in SMEs. To let's say show a little bit illustrative what it came out, this is a pyramid. It seems that main reasons as barriers in implementing energy efficiency measures, they are mostly financial reasons and lack of time resources, while the next come the low awareness on the benefits of energy efficiency, and also the lack of integrated long-term energy efficiency strategy. The other barriers like low priority in investments or lack of effective support supplementary schemes or lack of skills and expertise, they are not, let's say, so important in the opinion of the decision makers in SMEs. Next slide, please. And Coming to something like conclusions, we could say that all 4 projects revealed more or less similar results in the identification of barriers and the implementation of the energy efficiency improvement measures. The main motivation for the implementation of such measures is still the reduction of the energy costs and the energy bills. However, the SMEs, they seem to be reluctant in investing in energy efficiency measures. They consider them as low priority. There is a lack of dedicated energy management staff that deal with the monitoring of energy. There is also a lack of knowledge on existing policies and opportunities for SMEs towards energy efficiency. Only a small part of the companies we contacted have implemented energy audits and energy efficiency measures, or they plan to do it in the future. However, the SMEs that they have conducted energy audits, generally they proceed to investments on energy efficiency, and this shows more or less a potential roadmap, meaning that energy audit is a very good starting point to, let's say, urge SMEs towards implementing energy efficiency investments and investments. So this was more or less this presentation. We tried to collect all findings from all 4 projects. Once again, I must highlight that this was done completely before the COVID-19 pandemic. Maybe some of the outcomes may have changed in between. So thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I will be very happy to answer them.
Thanks a lot, Grigoris. Yeah, we have one question regarding this this subject in the poll. In your opinion, which is the most common barrier that SMEs face? Please answer. Just a few seconds to give the chance to provide an answer. Yeah, then this is the live result. So it appeared that the 2/3 of the answers were related to the lack of understanding as the most common barrier that SMEs face. I don't know whether Grigoris, you would like to add a few comments on that, or we can share them.
Not actually, but there is a question in the chat that I have noticed. I don't know if it will be answered now or at the end of the session. I don't know what is the best practice.
Okay, let's keep to the probably to the end of, or if no, we have only one question. Let's go forward now with this question. Probably
okay, the question, I read the question for the rest of the audience. It says that the information collected through energy audits would be very useful as open access data to design future energy systems. Is there projects dedicated on this task, gathering data and make it open access at the European level? Well, I don't know actually, but among these 4 projects, I don't think that any one of these 4 projects has a similar task like this. Of course, deliverables of all projects are public; they are fully accessible by everyone. So the most of the findings they are there. But I must point out that this is a very delicate topic because of privacy reasons. You know, if you have data from a company, irrelevant if you anonymize them, it is really difficult to have them public. In some of our deliverables, for example, we faced the problem of on how many data from companies can we publicize actually in the deliverable, and how we can guarantee the anonymity and the GDPR actually protection for the SMEs. I think that this is the point. I would say that fully dedicated to some open access system, I don't think that any of these 4 projects has something like this in the outcomes. However, in all the deliverables of all projects, there will be very useful information regarding this question. So I would strongly suggest visit the websites, look at the outcomes, and they are really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Grigory. Yes, let's do it in this way. It's better to provide answer when they are still hot in the chat. Let's go then to the next session. We are perfectly on time. Then Mr. Erudino Liano from the E2 Driver Project, please introduce yourself.
Hello, and this is Erudino from Circe Foundation. I'm part of the E2 Driver Project, as Ricardo has said. I'm in charge of the design of the different training activities that is performed in this project. So for that reason, I will in charge of present the main training proposal and methodologies that is expected to perform in these 4 projects that we are presenting right now. So first of all, I just would like to contextualize how the education have evolving during the last decades. So you just have to take into account that traditionally the education and training programs have been based on the memorization schemes. The target group of this training was children, teenagers, and young adults, and the scheme was master classes. Yes, as all of you have lived in the university probably, and the scheme of this education was that the teacher explained different lessons and units, and the main role of the trainees is just to acquire and memorize this knowledge. So it's not expected an active role for their part. And one of the key points of this training and education schemes was to get the academic title that will justify that you have the specific knowledge that have provide you these training programs. So, and the situation have changed during the last years. Currently, as you know, the focus is not on memorization. Indeed, the scheme is more global. The scheme is that you will acquire different skills and values, and also is really important that you could confront with practical exercise in order to put in practice this knowledge in your daily life. So another key point is that the target group is not only children or teenagers or young adults, but the target groups become all people, because it's expected that all people during the whole professional life is studying different topics, taking into account the rapid transformation of the world. And obviously, maybe the most important factor that have changed the education in the last years is the immersion of different new technologies that have provided us more tools for putting practice in the education scheme. So for that reason, the online format have become more and more important during the last years. So next slide, please. Okay, so regarding the preferences, we just like to present 2 questions that we perform in a surveys for small and medium enterprises about the preferences of the training format. We were surprised because the majority part of the respondents preferred indeed formal training courses, so traditional formats or workshops. So no so the majority part of them prefer on-site training programs. But if we divide the respondents in the professional profiles, we could realize that in the scenario change depending on this professional profile. So it's true that technical managers and technicians prefer indeed on-site formats, so traditional trainers or even traditional trainers in technical managers or workshops with short formats. But in managers and scientific and engineering professional, they indeed prefer online courses or short monitoring and coaching sessions. Okay, so just taking into account this contextualization of the education, I just go to a brief explanation of the different training schemes that we will implement in these 4 projects. So the SPEEDIER project will implement 2 types of training. First one is the training for small and medium enterprises, which the objective is to increase the awareness among the small and medium enterprises staff, trying to create an energy culture and also provoking different behavioral changes. It's expected to perform senior manager, specific training for senior managers or junior employees. And something that is really important is that the format is not rigid. It's expected to be really flexible and adapted to the different needs and expectation of each company. So it's possible to perform training in different formats, but obviously this could change due to the current COVID-19 situation that is more likely to perform online sessions. So, and regarding and really interesting innovation, educational innovation that SPEEDIER will implement is the generation of an application that will use the gamification as a tool for achieve and get the training objectives. And so next slide, please. Yes, and the second type of the SPEEDIER training will be the SPEEDIER experts and SPEEDIER trainer training, that the objective will be to train different people in order to make them available to deliver the SPEEDIER service. So in order to do that, and the SPEEDIER project is preparing one session next December in 2020, where the objective is to train these SPEEDIER experts in order to be able to implement this SPEEDIER methodology. And also there will be a second round of training where the objective is to train also these SPEEDIER experts in order to be able to spread the methodology of the SPEEDIER, make them other people to be able to implement this kind of methodology. So next slide, please. Okay, regarding the Novelas project, it's really interesting in this project that they will be very focused on the generation of different video materials. Indeed, some of them there are already available in their YouTube platform. So I really encourage all the attenders to consult this platform, because the videos are really high quality and really interesting. And this project, as Ricardo has said before, is more focused on the construction, chemical and food sector, and the topic of these training activities will be, as all of these 4 projects, about energy audits and energy efficiency measures. So regarding the types of training that you could see in the next slide, is yes, as I have said before, is really important the generation of modules in video format that you will be able to find in YouTube, and also it's expected to perform different webinars and on-site training, short on-site training of 2 days in the companies, where Furthermore, it will be possible to record these sessions, and also this session will be uploaded in their platform and in their website in order to spread this knowledge about energy audits and energy efficiency measures. Okay, regarding the SMEmPower project, and they have an scheme of 2 training types. The first one is the on-site training, focus on small and medium enterprises and decision makers, and focus on decision makers and other small and medium enterprise staffs. And these trainings will be short, and the objective is to train at least 400 people in these companies, at least 5 per small and medium enterprises. And in the second one that I think is the really interesting, it's a really interesting training in this project, is the education and training course for energy managers, that will have a blended learning, so part on-site and part online. And the objective is to train at least 720 people. And what is really interesting in this second type of training is in SMEmPower is the certification scheme. You could see it in the second slide. And yeah, next slide, please. Yes, so here you can see that the SMEmPower is trying to create a course, is creating right now a course, what is the energy efficiency and sustainability for energy managers and energy professionals in small and medium enterprises. And this project is working with different European universities in order to include this knowledge in different university programs. So thanks to the collaboration to different universities around Europe, we'll be able to create a really effective and really interesting certification scheme in this project. So regarding the last project, but not least, because is the work in the project where I'm working on, is the E2 driver project. The objective of this project is to increase the collective intelligence of the automotive sector, and we are trying to create mainly 2 results. So the E2 driver methodology, that will be a guide for trainers in order to ensure an effective implementation of the training, and also as a replication tool. So because thanks to this guide for training, we will be able to train other people in order to implement training capacity building programs using our methodology that we are creating in this E2 driver project. And the second result is the collaborative cooperative platform, that will be it will be a platform where we will be able to find a repository of training materials. Also, there will be a part where we could perform the online part of the training capacity building programs. And finally, we will have an E2 driver community where we will try to make that the people that are participating in the training programs, and also external entities, could take in contact and maybe share ideas and impressions about different points of energy efficiency and energy audits. And second slide, please. And yes, the objective of the E2 driver is to train at least 40 companies around Europe, in France, in Germany, Italy, and Spain. The key point of this training is the customization, so we will try to adapt the capacity building program to the needs and interest of each company. We will use the ontological flip teaching as a pedagogical approach, which is a blended learning, so one on-site and online part, and also we will encourage the trainees to generate their own materials in order to share them with the community, with the E2 driver community. And an innovation that we will implement in this project is the use of virtual reality as a serious gamification training of the E2 driver. So, and this is the second part of the presentation, and obviously if you have questions or doubts, let me know through the chat, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rudino. Yeah, let's go forward to this session, Paul. We have a couple of questions. The first one, in these trainings, what do you think should be targeted? Please provide your answer according to the available options. Yeah. Okay, as a result of the poll, as we can see, more than 2/3 of the answers have related as a target of the training all employees on energy efficiency measures. So this is reaching the 70% of the preferences. Of course, I forgot to mention it was possible to include more than one answer. Then the next question of this part of the poll, please. What kind of format you consider better for these courses, whether online or face-to-face? So this time only one option, please. Then this time, as you can see, almost the half of the people answer 50% online and 50% face-to-face. Of course, we have to face the current situation, but anyway, a blended modality, of course, is one preferred by the audience. I see just one question in the chat, so probably it's better if we deal with it right now. I don't know if
there's also one question previously, Ricardo. There are two questions.
Okay.
So I cannot see them, or
okay, now the last one to Rudinho. Good morning. Do you plan to create any synergies between the presented projects? Which kind of action could be put in place to promote these synergies? So this is a question.
Yes. Okay. So if you want, I can answer right now. Yes, and yes, the objective indeed is this collaboration in this presentation was the first step for what I hope it will be a close collaboration between the different projects, because indeed all of us we are preparing right now our main project results. So after we go deeply in the results and we could get more results in our projects, our objective is to create a close collaboration between the project. But obviously this is something that we could see during the next months, because yes, as I have said before, we are right now just preparing our preliminary works in the different projects. But yes, the objective is to have a close collaboration between the projects. Yes.
Thanks a lot. Yes, I see a question for Grigoris. I think we can deal with it during the conclusion, so we'll have some time to deal with all the other questions that may arise now. Let's give the floor to Mrs. Jo Southernwood, which is from the project SPEEDIER. Please introduce yourself. Thanks.
Thanks, Ricardo. Nice to be here this morning. Thanks everyone for joining us. My name's Jo Southernwood and I'm a senior research engineer. I work for the International Energy Research Centre, and we're based at the Tyndall National Institute in Cork in Ireland. And as you've heard, I'm the coordinator of the SPEEDIER project. So you've heard quite a lot about the projects this morning, the 4 that we're presenting to you. You've heard some of the barriers that they're facing, some of their opinions and attitudes towards energy efficiency and towards implementing energy efficiency measures. You've heard about some of the training activities that all of the projects are working on. What I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to take a more detailed look at the policy side of things and look at how can policies drive uptake of energy efficiency in SMEs. And just before I move on, just a reminder, if you have any questions, do put them in the chat, either for myself or for my colleagues, and we'll take questions at the end and hopefully have a bit of a discussion. So do interact with us and ask us any questions. If there's anything we don't get to, we'll respond after the workshop by email if we can. So if we just take a look at some existing policies EU-wide, there are a number that are in operation at the moment and that are driving our activities in these projects and activities around Europe. So the main one there is the Energy Efficiency Directive. So that's the main one that's looking at energy efficiency around Europe and includes some provision for SMEs. So the overall target there is a 32.5% reduction in energy consumption, so an improvement in energy efficiency by 2030 across the EU. That may change again, that may increase further if the directive is amended further in the coming years, and indeed we do expect it to become more stringent and to become more difficult as time goes on. Why do I mention this? Well, you heard earlier that SMEs make up 99% of businesses and account for 13% of energy consumption around Europe. So that's quite a big proportion of energy consumption. It's quite a big target, but of course the difficulty is that that energy consumption is distributed among many much smaller businesses. So the question that we're trying to answer with these projects is, how do we access that opportunity? How do we tap into that potential? And Article 8 of the Energy Efficiency Directive specifically looks at energy audits and energy management in businesses. You may be aware of the regulations around large organisations that are covered in Article 8. So large organisations in Europe must have an energy audit. It's mandatory for them to have an energy audit once every 4 years. But it also includes a further clause for SMEs in which member states are obliged to set up support mechanisms to encourage SMEs to undertake an energy audit and then to go further and implement those measures. But it's a support mechanism rather than a mandatory requirement for energy audits for SMEs. If we look then at the national level, that Energy Efficiency Directive has been transposed into national law in every member state. And until this year, member states would have had to prepare national energy efficiency action plans. Those have now been replaced by national energy and climate plans for the period 2021 to 2030. But the idea is to build a 10-year integrated plan to achieve those targets. And what we see is that member states have transposed Article 8 of the Energy Efficiency Directive in many different ways. So some of them have included some energy intensive SMEs within the mandatory obligation to undertake energy audits, whilst others have not, which means that SMEs are not obligated in all cases to undertake an audit. In some member states, they have put in place financial support mechanisms, whilst others have taken a more information-based approach where they have introduced support mechanisms to give information to SMEs or to support them through the audit process. So the range of different implementation methodologies is huge around Europe. And then we come to the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. This is where we get more specific around the buildings themselves that the SMEs might occupy. So the idea of this one is to improve the efficiency of the building stock and to decarbonise the building stock by 2050, with an aim that all new buildings must be near zero energy building by the end of this year. So this directive really places obligations on SMEs that, well, all organisations that own their own building and have control of their own building. So that could be an SME owner, it could be a landlord, could be a property management company, but the idea is that they're obligated to ensure that their building is as efficient as it can be by meeting those specific regulations. So if we move on to the next slide, the key message really that I wanted to talk through in this presentation is that despite all of these policies, you heard in the first presentation that most SMEs around Europe that we surveyed have not had an energy audit in the last 5 years. They don't have an energy manager, and many of them don't have an energy policy. So you've seen that some SMEs who have had an audit have gone on to implement measures. They tend to be the easier, quick win, fast payback period measures that Grigoris was talking about, like the lighting, the heating controls, but they are less able to implement the whole building systems that are really needed to achieve those energy efficiency targets. So we feel that the policy in Europe needs to be strengthened at European level and within member states to encourage those actions to take place that will increase energy efficiency. So in the SPEEDIER project, we are just over halfway through. We have a year left on the project, and we have started now to look in more detail at the policy side of things and to try to undertake a gap analysis to really understand where are the gaps in European and national policy, and how could we advise policymakers to help to drive uptake of energy audits in SMEs and drive implementation of energy efficiency measures. So what we see at the European level is that there are no quantitative targets for SMEs in terms of their energy efficiency or their uptake of audits. And there are no mandatory obligations for a small business to undertake the audit. As we've heard, it varies between member states as to whether SMEs are obligated or not to undertake the audit. Some member states have taken the approach that they will include energy intensive SMEs in their mandatory audit obligations, but in general, it's not obligatory for SMEs to take an audit. And what we see examining member states across Europe against the 2020 targets, so the original 2020 targets, it seems like that target might be missed in some member states. At the national level, as I've already mentioned, there's a varied level of transposition of the Energy Efficiency Directive Article 8 into national law. Everybody's taking a different approach. Some provide information, some provide financial support, some require audits. It's quite varied, and I think that there could be more consistency between the various member states with some more guidance. Across the board, there seems to be a lack of financial support for SMEs, and we saw that again from the SMEs that we surveyed themselves. They cited lack of finance in a number of cases. And often the support is limited to information or a free energy audit with no further follow-up support to go forward and implement the measures in practice. At the company level, what we've found from our initial investigations across all of the projects is that SMEs have a lack of resource, and that includes time, lack of time to implement the measures, lack of money and the financial aspect, and a lack of knowledge even. So many of the SMEs that we spoke to said that, you know, they don't really know how to take a decision about what is the best course of action to improve the level of energy efficiency in their organisation. What we also find is that there's a poor understanding of the multiple benefits of energy efficiency. And by that I mean the other benefits such as improving thermal comfort, improving staff health and well-being, improved building value. There are many other benefits that are not very well understood. And SMEs, of course, have different priorities. They're focused on running their business, so they're not so focused on energy. If I can have the next slide, please. So really the main message for this presentation is that you've heard about 4 different projects today, and every project is developing a slightly different solution and taking a slightly different approach to these challenges that we're facing. In the SPEEDIER project, we are looking at outsourcing the role of energy manager. So we're saying, okay, well, SMEs have told us they lack the resource to deliver energy efficiency. They don't have the time to do it, and they don't know what to do. So let's outsource that process to an energy expert who does know what to do. And in many cases, the SME won't need a full-time energy manager. They will just need some energy management advice and guidance to help them to identify the correct measures to implement and guide them through the implementation process. So that's what we're testing with SPEEDIER, alongside the idea of a self-financing ring fencing mechanism. So the idea is that you implement the low and no cost measures first to generate some initial very easy savings. You ring fence those savings and reinvest them in more costly measures. In SMEmPower, they're taking a different approach, and they're looking at creating training programs that empower the SMEs to implement energy efficiency in their own businesses by improving their own skills. So that's really looking at internally, how can we help those SMEs to understand what the opportunities are within their business, and to give them the skills that they need to drive that process forward and manage the implementation process themselves. So coming at the problem from a different perspective. In E2 Driver, again, a slightly different approach in that they are developing customized and innovative training approaches. So you heard from Eridino about the innovative training approaches and the gamification type training approach that they're building. And they're customizing it specifically, in this case, for the automotive sector. So here we're saying, well, perhaps if we look at a particular sector, there might be opportunities that are similar across many businesses that can be replicated throughout the sector. So it's taking a more sector-specific approach. Innoveas is doing something similar. You heard that they're looking at a particular sector also in terms of manufacturing and heavy industry. They're also going a step further and working with industry associations to reach SMEs and to build their internal capacity and enhance the energy culture. So that's really looking at the role of a third party in terms of an association, whose role it is to represent the best interests of those SMEs, to take that role further and help them to enhance and develop their energy culture. So next slide, please. Yeah. So every project is taking a different approach, and they all tackle different barriers. And what I'm trying to show in this table is that in the left-hand column there, you see all the barriers, or many of the barriers that were identified in the first presentation that you had this morning from Grigoris. So lack of time and finance, poor internal knowledge and skills, lack of understanding of the multiple benefits, competing business priorities and a poor energy culture, lack of training and lack of support, and only the easy energy efficiency measures being implemented. And you can see that none of the 4 projects tackle all of the barriers at the same time. And what I'm trying to say here is that all of the approaches that are being tested in these projects solve a different piece of the puzzle and provide a different element that contributes to solving the problem as a whole. So as I mentioned with SPEEDIER, we're outsourcing, really we're tackling the problems of lack of time, lack of finance, poor understanding, competing business priorities by taking that outside of the SME and using an outsourced energy manager to deliver those services. Whereas SMEmPower, E2 Driver, Innoveas, they're taking more of an internal approach and upskilling the staff members within the SME at all levels. So that's at the general staff level and at the senior management level, to try to solve some of these problems around the internal knowledge and skills of the SMEs and the understanding of the various benefits of energy efficiency beyond the simple reduction in energy bill. Next slide, please. So yeah, the key message of my presentation is that there's no single approach that's going to remove all of these barriers, and a combination of approaches and solutions are required. The projects that you've heard about today are some of the ones that are testing these, but you heard in the presentation from the project officer this morning that there are even other projects beyond these four that are taking, again, slightly different approaches and trying to implement these further. So I think the question that we had earlier around combining the approaches is a really pertinent one, and certainly it would be fantastic to try and combine all of these learnings from all of the different projects and move forward with a combined solution. Next slide, please. So this is my final slide, then, bringing it all together across the projects that you've been presented with this morning. We have all come up with some fairly common recommendations between the projects, and this is what we've come up with. We think it's important to consider whether mandatory audits for SMEs will be useful, because a mandatory audit, whilst it's viewed negatively by many businesses because it seems to be more of a compliance exercise, what it does do is create a demand-driven market for energy audits and for internal capacity building. And we've already heard that those organisations that undertake an audit are more likely to go on to implement the measures that are identified in the audit. So potentially, mandatory energy audits for SMEs could be a way to drive implementation as a first step. We feel that it's important to encourage a range of support mechanisms, and we feel that information on its own is not enough. So many member states have gone down the route of implementing information programs and making data available on websites or best practice guides. On its own, we feel that that's not enough to drive energy audits and to drive uptake of implementation of energy efficiency measures, because we've heard that SMEs still feel they lack the knowledge and support to implement those measures. So they need support through the implementation phase as well. The third item on the list there is that we feel it's important to promote the multiple benefits of energy efficiency. So energy efficiency doesn't just result in a drop in energy bills and a reduction in carbon emissions. It can also have other benefits that are less well understood, particularly by SMEs. But it can improve thermal comfort, which can lead to better staff health and well-being. An energy efficient building that has been upgraded is often a smart building, and that might have an impact on the building value. It might reduce the maintenance costs of running the building, and it can also be used as a way to improve the brand image of the SME itself. And all of those things have a value for SMEs, but that value isn't particularly well understood at the moment, and it's not very well marketed. So I think it's important to promote those multiple benefits of energy efficiency going forward. We've also found that many SMEs have struggled with financing energy efficiency, either because there isn't finance available or because there is finance available, but it's very difficult to access. And so what we feel is that it's important to have a joined up approach to financing these measures, so that when they are identified, the SME can go on and implement those measures. And this can be done through joined up tax incentives or grants, or even revolving energy efficiency funds, such as the one we're testing in SPEEDIER, where the energy savings go on to pay for other measures in the future. And even an energy tariff structure could be used to incentivise investment in some cases. And finally, we feel that training is required at all levels. So it's important to train the SME staff. It's important to develop that energy culture. But I think it's also important to train energy experts in terms of using different ways of speaking to the SMEs and explaining to them the different multiple benefits, because there could be greater value there that leads to greater uptake. Similarly, for finance providers, it's often difficult to access finance because finance providers only look at credit ratings and they don't necessarily look at the benefits of energy efficiency and the payback periods of projects in terms of reductions on energy bills. So training for finance providers could help them to develop products that are more suited to efficiency projects in SMEs. And similarly for industry associations, they could broaden their remit with a greater understanding of energy projects. I think that's it from me. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Joe. And I think we still have enough time to the last poll, and then to come back in the conclusion to the question raised during in the chat. We have a couple of them. So yeah, a couple of questions regarding this issue. Which policy could help increasing uptake of energy audits? Please choose. What do you think is more appropriate according to this option? Of course, a multiple choice is possible. Please choose the most appropriate you believe in. Yeah, then as a result, we can see that almost 2/3 said provide a range of support mechanisms, and half of them mandatory energy audit for SMEs and develops suitable financing mechanism for SMEs. So these are the most answer options. Then we have last question in our poll. Yeah, which policy could increase implementation of energy efficiency measure? Again, please choose the most appropriate ones, having the opportunity to select more than one option, of course. Well, then this time, yeah, the vast majority answer provide a range of support mechanism with 83%. And second option were mandatory energy audit for SMEs, as well as develop suitable financing mechanism for SMEs. So these were the main results popping up in our poll. Of course, all the results will be made then available. Let's go back to a question that came to Jo when she was presenting. Is that I think that policy to support energy efficiency should be changed, enlarged, taking into account not only energy but environmental issues as a whole. What do you think about it? Could be better to promote broadly measure for reducing possible negative effect on the environment?
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I think it's a valid point. Yes, we could broaden the policy to take into account environmental aspects. In fact, certainly one of the things we're finding with the SMEs that we're engaged with is that they are very aware, or they're more aware on waste management, and they're more aware on how to reduce or wanting to reduce waste of materials within their organization. And I think that that could be a good route in, certainly to start to talk about these issues. So yes, I think taking a broader approach would help us to engage more with SMEs and to start the conversation. And I think it's important that we don't, in broadening it, we don't lose sight of the energy aspect of it. So yes, it's a useful way of starting the conversation. Of course, it's important to look at the environment as a whole, and perhaps some SMEs might have a bigger impact on other aspects of the environment, such as water use or waste management or supply chain issues. So yes, in those cases, it makes sense to look at those issues alongside the energy side of things as well, and it could enhance the conversation, I think.
Thank you very much. I think we have still a couple of minutes to go back to a question raised from Tom Flynn. Sorry for having answered only now. A question to Grigoris. Did you notice any sector, example, hospitality, hotel, that was more keen than other to do more regards to energy efficiency?
Well, it's a very interesting question. Actually, we didn't, because I think that it depends on the country. So it's difficult to have some general conclusions regarding a sector that is, let's say, the most keen or most energy intensive all along the European countries involved in one or another project. Anyway, I think that a good practice, we followed this in our project, and perhaps also in the other projects, is actually to try to tackle first the main, the most energy consuming SMEs, that they are the more potential candidates to implement energy efficiency measures. This is a good practice for all projects that they are using a cross-sectoral approach. So, for example, in some countries, this is hospitality sector. In some other countries, it's sort of service provider or whatever. Depends. So it's not general conclusion here.
Thank you very much, Grigoris. I don't see any more question or issues popping up in the chat. We've been almost perfectly on time. I hope that we met the expectation of the audience with this workshop, and we had enough time to tackle all the issues that we provided in this workshop. Anyway, you will have the possibility to know much more information from all these 4 projects, also surfing on the websites where all of the projects are hosting and are uploading material and document coming from the project. I really like to thank you, first of all, Mr. Oronzo Daloiso, for joining this presentation. I really want to thank you all the speakers, and anyway, again, saying thank you to all of the participants to this workshop. And thanks for all, especially those who had provided inputs on that. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.